Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. A new set of Challenger decks has been announced, coming out in a couple of months, and they actually look a little bit better than usual. Normally, I'm down on this product because I feel like it has a lot of stuff that's about to rotate or overall just doesn't feel like it's worth your time. But at a cursory glance, these decks look pretty decent. So let's actually take a deep dive in and take a full look at the decks and decide if these are a worthwhile product for you. So we're going to start by looking at Allied Fires, all right? Allied Fires is a Planeswalker heavy deck. It's interesting to see a Planeswalker section that has way more cards in it than the creature section. It's a Super Friend style concept, right? Where you got lots of Planeswalker buddies coming on out to hang out with you. So with this deck, you get 3 Sarkhan the Masterless, 1 Ugin the Ineffable. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather. Me and Carly have been passing stuff back and forth, apparently. I can feel it. Feel it deep inside me. So, 3 Kasmina, Enigmatic Mentor, 4 Narset, Parter of Veils. 4 Narsets, that's pretty good. Honestly, Narset is one of the more valuable uncommon Planeswalkers, and it's nice to see that they actually included 4 for you here. And then you got 2 Saheeli Sublime Artificers. So that's the Planeswalker section. In the creature section, this deck only runs 2 different creatures. 1 copy of Kenrith the Returned King, and 2 copies of Fae of Wishes. Now obviously Fae of Wishes is pretty useful in that it lets you dig into your sideboard for a range of answers. And what's also interesting to note about this is Kenrith the Returned King, that's actually the Throne of Eldraine buy-a-box card. Now, obviously, these cards also, these buy-a-box cards are also available in the Collector's Edition boosters, so they're not limited to buy-a-box, but we can see this is another one of the subtle signs that the paper era of Magic has indeed ended, and that we are now living in a different time where LGSs no longer rank the same way they did with Wizards, and this is illustrated by the fact that Wizards is now willing to include cards that were once exclusives to game stores, to multiple products, not only your Collector's Edition, but also these decks as well. And I mean, let's take a moment to be real here. The era of the LGS, as much as I'm not happy about it, has really come to a close. And so expecting things to be limited to LGSs at this point it's a little bit naive, and I don't like being naive. So I'm going to accept it for what it is. Now, sorceries are the next category here. We have 3 Deafening Clarions. You get 2 Drawn from Dreams and 2 Time Wipes. So the majority of this are really obnoxious board wipes that I hate seeing against my green tower. Then we've got 10 enchantments, 4 Fires of Invention. Obviously, this is essentially a Fires deck, right? Fires is your way to get to play spells for free, but it does have the limitation you can only play 2 spells a turn and can't do anything on your opponent's turn. I actually did a video on Fires of Invention where I talked about how this card might be dangerous and too powerful, but I'm happy to say that they seem to have actually found a fairly decent balance in Standard for this free effect. Yes, it is strong, but it doesn't feel insurmountable the same way that Oko did. So you've also got 2 Banishing Lights and 4 Omens of the Sea. One to get in there and scry through your deck, and the other to remove some threats. Now the land base is all over the place in terms of, obviously, with the number of colors you're playing, you want access to all 5 colors to activate Kenrith's abilities and stuff. So you've got the lands to get there, although admittedly this is where Wizards did cheap out on the decks, and it's to be expected. We're not going to see you're not going to see playsets of playsets of Shocklands in these kind of decks, but you do get a Steam Vent, which is pretty cool. And you get a Temple of Enlightenment, Epiphany, and Triumph as well. 4 Interplanar Beacons to make it easier to cast the Planeswalkers and gain some life. 3 Swiftwater Cliffs, 3 Tranquil Coves, 3 Tranquil Coves, 4 Windscarred Crags, 5 islands, 2 mountains, and 2 plains. So that comprises the main deck. The sideboard is a bunch, mostly of one-ofs, for you to grab with your Fae of Wishes, or if you want to increase the copies of some of these cards that you're running in the deck. Because you'll see that your 4th Sarkhan the Masterless is in the sideboard there. They have a Mass Manipulation tossed in. That card is so obnoxious, but also really solid. It swings entire games on its own. I hate it. I hate Mass Manipulation. I hate having my beautiful green beastie stolen from me. But I understand why it's in the deck. It makes perfect sense. You've got 2 Devout Decrees, 1 Dovin's Veto, which I mean, that feels pretty low. If you want to be bringing any kind of counter magic into the deck, you don't have much in the way of options that way, and only 1 Veto is pretty low. You've got 2 Revoke Existences. Those can remove gods for you. You've got another copy of Time Wipe in case you feel like you need more board wipes if you're playing against a creature-heavy build. You've got another Ashiok Dream Render there in the sideboard. Oh wait, no, is Ashiok not in the main deck? Never mind. Ashiok's not in the main deck, so this is the only Ashiok in this build here. You've got Dovin Hand of Control tossed in there as well to give you some other options you don't normally have in the deck. 2 Fries, I mean 5 damage is pretty beefy. And 3 Thirst for Meanings for more draw, pitch, and enchantment. The deck does have 10 enchantments, so it seems like there's enough to make the Thirst for Meanings work in there. Overall, a half-decent deck with more shoved in there than I would have expected. So that started me off on the right foot going, this doesn't feel as bad as previous Challenger decks. The second Challenger deck is called Final Adventure. All right, this one has only 1 plane. What a huge swing. What a difference. 1 Planeswalker, you get 1 copy of Vraska Golgari Queen. And hilariously enough, on Wizards' website, it shows the image of the Masterpiece Edition. I think it's weird when they do that. They should show you the printing that you're going to get in the deck, but whatever. This deck is creature heavy. This is mostly creatures. You have 28 creatures in this deck. 2 Blacklands Paragons, 2 Knight of the Evan Legions, 4 Love-Struck Beasts, 2 Midnight Reapers, 2 Murderous Riders, 4 Edgewall Innkeepers, 4 Foulmire Knights, 4 Order of Midnights, 4 Smitten Swordmasters. So this is a adventure time. This is an adventure style deck. Do you guys remember the Magic card knockoff game that they made for Adventure Time, where you floop your pigs and stuff? That was a fun, silly little game. So yeah, this deck has a bunch of synergies in terms of you've got a number of knights that can benefit from the Blacklands Paragon. The Edgewall Innkeepers are going to be one of your key pieces in terms of wanting to draw a ton of cards. I've actually played like a lot of green-black adventure back when Throne of Eldraine first dropped, and I found the Edgewall Innkeeper to be just a house of card drawing. It's absolutely insane. So moving on, and you've got 2 sorceries. You got 2 copies of Find and Finality. These are great for fetching creatures back from your graveyard, or essentially wiping most of the board while pumping 1 of your beefy boys. As an instance, you've got 2 Disfigures for a little bit of creature removal. You've got 4 Lucky Clovers, which makes perfect sense in an adventure deck. Lucky Clovers are crazy with the amount that the amount of value they can generate for you off of the adventure spells and things like that. It gets really gross really, really fast. I mean, if you have out a Lucky Clover, all of a sudden your Midnight Riders, or not Midnight Riders, sorry, Murderous Riders are going to be taking out multiple creatures. Your Smitten Swordmasters are going to do multiple life smashes. Like, it just gets crazy. The land base here isn't as insane as the deck we just looked at because you only really need to have 2 colors for this, right? So you're not required to stretch as far. So you get 2 copies of Cathal Lochthwain, which is a great card if you've expended your resources, your hand's pretty much empty. I don't know how great Castle Lochthwain works when you're dealing with a bunch of cards that return cards from your graveyard to your hand, and also the Edgewall Innkeepers that keep feeling. I found when I played my adventure deck that I had a lot of cards in my hand a lot of the time, and Castle Lochthwain becomes a lot more dangerous when you have a big fat hand, and that's not as desirable. So you've got 1 Fabled Passage in here, which adds a nice little bit of value and helps to mana smooth. 2 Temples of Malady, 3 Jungle Hollows, 7 Forests, and 8 Swamps. And that's what comprises the main deck. For the sideboard, you have 2 Massacre Girls, and oh my lord, I never realized just how gross Massacre Girl can be when she gets rolling. Under the proper circumstances, she acts as an insane board wipe that leaves your opponent with no creatures and you with a nice fat 4/4. Not too shabby. So you've got 4 Duresses, 4 Noxious Grasps, 1 Cling to Dust, 2 Crawl Harpooners, and 2 Thrashing Brontodons. So you've got a number of different answers. You've got your Duresses to get rid of like early Planeswalkers or things like that, while also providing you information on your opponent's hand. You've got Noxious Grasps to deal with threats from particular colors. The Crawl Harpooners take out flyers, and Thrashing Brontodons are a fantastic answer to decks running enchantments like Fires of Invention, or also for messing up like a swingy Embercleave Bash or something like that, right? So overall, seems like an alright deck. We've got a Fires deck, we've got an Adventures deck. The next one we're going to be looking at is your mono red slap 'em in the mouth deck, and that has 3 Planeswalkers in it, 3 copies of Chandra, Acolyte of Flame, and it becomes the whole thing this deck is going to be built around is Cavalcade of Calamity. And if you've been playing in Standard, you know the deal with Cavalcade of Calamity, right? It cares about your little 1/1s, right? Every time you swing with a 1/1, you get to smash your opponent in the face for 1, or hit one of their Planeswalkers. So Chandra, Acolyte of Flame churns out a bunch of little donks for your Cavalcade to rip with. So you've got your creature section, which again, this is a very creature-heavy deck. Almost as many creatures as the deck we just looked at with 27. You get 4 Bone Crusher Giants, 4 Fervent Champions, 4 Runaway Steamkin, 4 Torbran, 4 Rimrock Knights, 4 Scorch Spitters, and 3 Tin Street Dodgers. I like that they're not going and just going, oh, there's a bunch of one-ofs in these kind of decks. Like, this deck has 4 copies of a lot of the cards you're going to want to have 4 copies of. This deck honestly needs very little tweaking done to it overall before it's going to be like the top tier you can have with red decks, which is nice to see. Challenger decks that can have a minimal amount of upgrading is what I like to see with Challenger decks. I don't like looking at Challenger decks and seeing that you need to purchase 2 of them and mash them together to get anywhere. And I feel like Wizards tried to lead us down that path in the past. So for me, this is exactly what I want to see with a Challenger deck. Where, I mean, we'll talk about the one card that I feel there should be more copies of when we get to it. But the next thing is the sorceries. There's just 4 light up the stages. It's interesting that there's no real burn in terms of like Skewer the Critics or Shocks, although admittedly Shock is underpowered in the current environment. In terms of burn, you really only have the Bone Crusher Giants, and other than that, you're just really trying to like hammer through as hard as you can. This deck is 100% like pedal to the metal, just run with all the gas that you have and just like try and get there. So the deck has 1 Embercleave. Now this is where I feel like they cheaped out. This is what needs some more tweaking in terms of, if you're running this deck, in all honesty, you're going to want multiple copies of Embercleave, because Embercleave and Torbran are your biggest, like, surprise, you're dead maneuvers. Torbran is gross because he cranks up the damage that all your cards do, and Embercleave is gross because you can cheap it out with a bunch of little dongles on the attack, and all of a sudden, the creature that it's on gets +1/+1, and is double striking and trampling on through. Like, it's just, the Embercleave is such a crazy swingy card. Then you've got your 4 Cavalcades of Calamity given for this kind of deck. You've got 3 Castle Embereths as your lands, along with 18 mountains. So the deck has fewer lands than the other decks do, but that makes sense because overall the casting cost curve on this deck is much cheaper. And Castle Embereths are nice for that little boost to your little dudes when you're swinging in with them, and it's like, they're not going to do that much. All of a sudden they're pumped up by 1 power, and that makes things a lot more significant. Now, when we turn to the sideboard, you can see we've got 3 Experimental Frenzies, which are great for if you are going to run out of gas. If you need the game to go longer and you know you're not going to be able to just sprint to victory right away, Experimental Frenzy is a fantastic way to get a lot of value out of 1 card. They've got, okay, here are the Shocks. In the sideboard, they've got Shocks in case you feel like you need some cheap burns. So, hey, all right, this is where the burn is hiding. I can see 3 Slaying Fires in there as well. I was wondering about that. You've got 2 Tybalt Rakish Instigators. Now, that's an interesting include that I wasn't expecting to see, but it does shut off your opponent's life gain, and it does generate 1/1 tokens that will also get your Cavalcade going. So not too bad that way. And then you've got 3 Satyr's Cunning, which I'm trying to remember. Is that the card that makes 1/1 Satyr tokens with Escape? Is that what that is? I think. Yeah, that's what it is. It's 1 red. create a 1/1 Satyr token, and then it escapes for 3 and exiling 2 cards. The fact that it has a really cheap escape cost is not too shabby, but honestly, this is, I'm not too excited about this card. Whatever. Overall, though, this deck, aside from the lack of Embercleaves, it actually seems like a really, really solid challenger deck to pick up and just be able to run out of the box. That deck looks like it can actually win a bunch of games straight out of the box, even if you don't have any extra Embercleaves to add. So the final deck that we're going to take a look at here is the Flash of Ferocity deck. Now, this one is interesting in that it only has creatures, instants, and lands in the main deck. So you got 22 creatures. You've got your Brazen Borrower, 4 Nightpack Ambushers. Oh, do I love Nightpack Ambusher, dude. I run this in my green deck, and they're fantastic. Just these 4 mana for a 4/4, comes out at instant speed and generates extra creatures for you. You've got a 1 Wave Break Hippocamp. I'm surprised they didn't put more of those in. It's not like it's a big valuable card, and the idea behind this deck is to be this is the play on your opponent's turn deck, if you didn't know. The idea is to just basically be, yo, I'm over here. I'm not really going to do anything in my turn. It's almost like modern day draw go, as they called it, where you're doing the majority of things on your opponent's turn. Ideally, you're not really casting anything on your turn. You want to take advantage of like your Nightpack Ambushers generating extra wolves for you. You've also got like Brineborn Cutthroats. I guess I should continue on with the creatures for it. So you get 4 Wildborn Preservers, 4 Brineborn Cutthroats, 4 Frilled Mystics, and 4 Spectral Sailors. Now you'll notice all of these creatures can be played on your opponent's turn. So the whole idea is to just exist during your opponent's turn. There are going to be very few instances where you're actually going to be interested in doing things on your own turn. That's the whole point, is you have cards that have severe advantages if you are playing on your opponent's turn. Nightpack Ambusher won't generate you a free wolf every turn if you're casting spells on your turn. Brineborn Cutthroat gets its bonuses from you playing cards during your opponent's turn. That's how it gets a +1/+1 counters. The other creatures like Wildborn Preserver and Spectral Sailor don't need to be played on your opponent's turn, but they benefit you from the fact that you can play them on your opponent's turn. And the fact is, it gets pretty gross when at the end of your opponent's turn you can play a creature, boost up your Wildborn Preserver, draw off your Hippocamp, boost your Cutthroat, not worry about on your turn how your Ambusher is going to be worried about spells. You got your Frilled Mystic to counter things like that. That's a solid lineup of creatures, all with Flash. And you get 1 Brazen Borrower with the deck, and Brazen Borrower is one of the hottest mythics from Throne of Eldraine. It's a lot of value packed into one card. The fact that it's a bounce and also a 3/1 body is really, really, really solid. Now in the instant category, we have 2 Thassa's Interventions, 4 Ops, 4 Quenches, 2 Sinister Sabotages, 2 Sinister Sabotages, 2 Unsummons. So the deck isn't like super counter heavy, but it does have a number of counters, right? You've got your 4 Frilled Mystics, plus a number of these other instants as well. But this is all just stuff you're going to want to do on your opponent's turn. When we look at the lands, we see you get 2 Castle Vantresses, great for scrying and figure out what you have going on. You can do that before your turn and see, oh, well, what am I going to draw into, right? Or, I mean, it works well with things like Spectral Sailor if you're about to draw on your opponent's turn, but that's also mana intensive. So this deck also includes a Fabled Passage. These are nice value includes. I do like that. 2 Temple of Mysteries, 3 Thornwood Falls, 8 Forests, and 8 Islands. Now, when we turn to the sideboard for this green-blue deck, we see 3 Shifting Ceratops. Now, that's an interesting choice. That's not a flash creature, but it's a very, very respectable creature because it can't be countered and it's pro-blue. So if you're playing against a control deck, I mean, it comes out, it can't be countered, it's pro-blue, and you can give it haste for an extra mana. So it can come out of nowhere and do heavy life swings, charging in for 5 damage. I'm a big fan of Shifting Ceratops. I run those in my green tower. And in the sideboard, we can see that there are more counterspell style options. You've got your Disdainful Strokes, you've got Negates, you've got Aether Gust, and Aether Gust isn't technically a counterspell, but it functions very, very similarly to it, where it allows you to put the spell on top of the bottom of the, like, I mean, the owner of the spell gets to choose what happens with it. So it's not the most crazy thing where you automatically get to make the best choices, but the fact that it can hit a spell or a permanent makes it very, very strong, very, very versatile. I mean, yes, it can only hit red or green, but those are the hotness right now. There's a lot of red and green action going on, and it is a sideboard card, right? So you're not going to automatically play it. And then you've got Mystical Disputes. Again, this is another sideboard style card, another counterspell that becomes a lot more powerful when you're playing against a blue deck, right? Because it drops the casting cost of it down to 1 blue. And a 1 blue counter, I mean, sure, it's a conditional counter, but still, 1 blue counter, pretty powerful. And then you've got 3 Threnody Singers. And this is a flash creature that will basically debuff one of your opponent's creatures. It's a great way to surprise them, reduce the power on one of their creatures, and then get yourself some advantageous blocking, or just save yourself some time. Threnody Singer can save you from 2 creatures at once. It can reduce the power of one creature while at the same time being thrown in the way of another creature, just meat grinded down. So overall, I gotta say, looking at these challenger decks, I am more impressed than I was with previous offerings in this product line. So I'm glad to see that not all the products that Wizards is making are the greediest thing that they can be, because that sort of stuff leaves you concerned about the health of the game overall, in terms of there's only so much you can push that. So overall, I would say these are reasonable purchases. They may not be the absolute best. I mean, the red deck is missing an Embercleave, but it seems like there's enough value, and more importantly, it's not about value, right? More importantly, they don't feel like they're just primed with stuff that's about to rotate on you. Like, this is about to rotate, this is about to rotate, this is about to rotate. It doesn't seem like you're having a bunch of junk hefted on you. In fact, there's even some cards included from Theros, which is a nice thing to see. So overall, I give these a thumbs up. Let me know what you guys think about these in the comments below. Big shout out to all my patrons and channel members. Thank you for supporting what I do here, and I will see all of you people tomorrow.